We sailed our 37-foot monohull around the world, but now we have a new challenge. To sail this catamaran across 3,000 miles of Atlantic Ocean.
Although we've been here before, it turns out joining another boat can make the same ocean an entirely different experience.
With high highs...
Yeah, you're free! Yes! Result, guys.
And low lows, as we battle multiple breakages.
So it turns out it's worse than we thought, but it looks like we don't have an autopilot now.
In this series, we share the realities of life on board a catamaran, sailing across the vast open ocean, out of sight of land for weeks.
Right, it's the chain that snapped. The chain? The chain has snapped.
We are 5 days in to our 3,000-mile offshore passage across the Atlantic Ocean, and things are starting to break. Out here in the middle of the ocean, there is no help available, so we have to fix everything ourselves, with just what we have on board.
We've got the first bit of damage on the trip. If you look at the top of the mast, you can see that the top batten, which holds out the back edge of the mainsail, has snapped. So I'm not sure what would have caused that, but we're going to have to turn up into the wind, drop the mainsail. We do have spare battens, but we'll need to cut them to the right length and put it all back together and then rehoist it. So we'll just be sailing along with just to know for a little while. The conditions now are really good for fixing it before nightfall, so just going to get on and get it fixed as soon as we can. So this is one of the spare pieces of batten that we have on board. It's quite strong. It's actually over length, so we'll cut it to size with a hacksaw once we've got the old bits out and we know what length we need.
But on a boat of this size, just getting to the mainsail to remove the broken batten is not so easy.
So there's the first splintered piece, properly broken. Alright, it's full of splinters. It's not great having a catamaran, we have to climb into the boom, is it? The hazards of big boats. So we had noticed that the top batten was more flexible than we would have expected, and I think it's just been gradually breaking down over time, probably not just over this trip, but over probably a number of years, I guess, Ron. So it shouldn't be a case if we put another batten in, it shouldn't just break on us, it should last a decent amount of time. Thank you.
Unfortunately, the splintered end of the broken batten had also cut a hole in the batten pocket on the sail, so we had to repair the hole with some sticky back sailcloth before we could rehoist the mainsail. A new day at sea brought a new problem that needed fixing, and this one was much more serious.
This morning we've started hearing a graunching sound from the steering, which clearly is not a good thing. We've traced it to behind the wheel where there's a cog on a shaft, and it looks like that cog is secured to the shaft with grub screws. And it's not secured to the shaft anymore, it's slipping. So possibly due to the amount of force that's on the rudders as we're skewing down these waves, and obviously with a cat you can't let the main all the way out, so as you skew sideways it really loads up and tries to turn the boat more, which means the rudders have got to try that much harder to keep the boat straight. So what we're going to have to do to try and fix it is drop all the sails, because we need the rudder not to be moving and the wheel not to be moving, so that we can get in there and hopefully tighten up those grub screws. We've got 2,000 miles to go. It'd be really good to have a steering system for those 2,000 miles.
After stopping the boat to investigate further, we realised that the problem was not with the steering wheel, but instead with the autopilot.
Get yourself on a nice course and then we'll give it a go.
So without the autopilot, we're hand steering for a little bit, but right now we're kind of hove to, and I'm just holding the wheel steady so that Ron can get the grub screw in, like a death-like vice grip on the wheel. Once he's done that, hopefully we'll be able to bear away and test the autopilot.
Go another, Matt, turn just a little bit more to port. Tiny bit, stop!
So unfortunately that didn't work. We could only get one of the grub screws out to replace with a new one, and the other one just has its head rounded off, so we couldn't tighten it up. So even with just one new one tightened on there, it just still slipping. So what we're going to have to do now is take the whole autopilot unit off, or what Ron's going to do, and then drill out the grub screw, drill through, and we might actually have to put an extra hole in, and we're going to pin it rather than just have a grub screw, so that then it won't be able to slip. But whilst we're doing that, of course, we won't have an autopilot, so we'll have to be hand steering. So we're going to have to hand steer for the next few hours whilst we take this out, drill it, put it all back together. And then hopefully we'll have an autopilot again. Luckily, this doesn't affect the actual steering wheel and the hand steering, so even if this doesn't work, we'll still be able to hand steer. But hand steering for 2,000 miles is not something we want to be doing. So this is the autopilot unit removed from the boat. So it turns out it's worse than we thought. We thought that it was just grub screws not tight enough causing it to slip on the shaft, but it turns out when we get it apart there's actually a keyway there, so it's definitely not slipping on that shaft, which means it's something inside the drive unit itself, and we don't have the spares kit on board for the replacement drive belt and things like that. So we're going to take it apart and see what it is, but it looks like we don't have an autopilot now. Meanwhile, whilst we're working on the floor trying to take the autopilot unit apart, Amy's hand steering, keeping us on course for the Caribbean. Ron's taken the autopilot completely into its constituent parts, and it looks like it's wear on the belt, which is a known problem, and the gear that the belt connects onto on the motor itself. And you can see there's been a lot of wear on this, and that's led to, because this it looks like, because this gear has worn down, the tension holding the belt onto it has reduced because the gear's got thinner. So since we don't have a replacement gear and pulley, what we're going to do is we're going to elongate the 3 holes that the motor bolts into the mounting so that we can stretch the belt a little bit and increase the tension on the belt, and we're hoping that that's going to then stop it slipping. So it means we need to elongate these 3 holes here into ovals, mount the motor only 2 or 3 millimeters lower down, and then put a wedge in the holes so that it can't spring back up. And then hopefully, it does feel like it's still got life in it, this belt. Hopefully it will then be able to grip the gear here, and we will have a working autopilot again. There are spares kits for these, which really we ought to be carrying, and then we would just swap the parts out. But since we don't have that, this is the only other way we can think of to get our autopilot working again. We thought the problem would be in here with these plastic gears, but absolutely they are fine. So it can only be the belt onto this cog here. So these are the brass gears, so they're on the higher load side, which are the upgrade for this autopilot. So that's actually been done, which is good. Well done, Ron. So Ron is just appearing out of the depths of the autopilot. He's refitted it back together, and it appears to be working. No graunching sound so far. So that is a massive relief if we don't have to hand steer for the next 2,000 miles. So, time for a little update on progress. We're 6 days into the passage. We've got about 17 or 1800 miles left to go to the Caribbean. And we'll start with the good news. It's an absolutely glorious Tradewind sailing day. You don't get much better than this. The wind's shifted round to come more over our aft quarter, so we're broad reaching instead of running dead downwind, which means we're doing, 6.5 at the moment, but we're doing 7 and 8 knots. So we're making great progress. There's flying fish around, and it's an absolutely beautiful day. So yeah, that's the good news. The other bit of good news is we're having an unprecedented opportunity to find out what it's like to hand steer a Leopard 44 across the Atlantic Ocean. And actually, I've been having fun over the last couple of hours, standing here steering. And this opportunity has come to us by the fact that the autopilot is screwed. So Ron's fix worked for about 2 watches last night, so we got a bit more sleep. And then it all just started slipping and stripping the gear. So Ron's... So why don't we have put the spare autopilot on, of course? Well, so when we asked Ron when we were joining the boat, we asked about a spare autopilot, and he said yes, he's got one. But it turns out that spare autopilot is actually a tiller pilot, which is nowhere near man enough for the job of sailing a boat like this, and had never been tested. So it's just not even worth trying to put on. So we don't have a spare autopilot, or in fact the spare autopilot is us. So Ron's pretty embarrassed and upset about that, so he's working really hard to try and get that autopilot back working again by making new cogs and things. He's a really clever guy, so if he manages it, that will be brilliant, because I really don't want to steer for the rest of the way. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is change our watch system. So up until now, we've been doing 4 on, 4 off during the night, so which is great because you get a solid 8 hours sleep twice, and then on the third night you get 4 hours, a watch of 4 hours, and then another 4 hours solid sleep, so we'll be nice and rested. But now we're going to change that, because actually helming is quite hard work, especially when you're trying to do a compass course. So we're going to do shorter shifts, because it's difficult to keep it up for 4 hours. You end up being absolutely completely knackered. So we're going to do 2 hours steering, and then if all 4 of us are happy steering, that means we can have 6 hours off. That's achievable. Jane's not quite so confident with the helming, so this is an unprecedented opportunity for her to get lots of sea miles and practice at helming as well. So I think by the time we get to the Caribbean, Jane is going to be an excellent helmsperson as well. So there's lots of positives to take, but the negative is the autopilot is screwed, and you should never set out on a passage across an ocean without a spare working autopilot. And I'm kicking myself that we did, even though we thought we had one at the time. Oh yes, one other thing. We showed you us changing the top batten on the mainsail the other day. And then when we really looked at it, the second batten down seemed very weak as well. And so we decided to pull that one out, and it had split. It hadn't completely broken, but it was on its way to. So we put the spare in there. So we've now replaced the top 2 battens in the mainsail. And they were also breaking out of the car on the front of the mast. So we've put some extra bolts through those cars to hold them together so the batten can't come out. So there's been a fair amount of boat work going on to keep this show on the road. The sea state out here today is just so calm, absolutely beautiful. 15, 16 knots of wind, it's perfect. It's only going to be like this for another day or so, and then it looks like we're going to have winds gusting to 30 knots for the last week run into the Caribbean. But yeah, got to make the most of these beautiful conditions whilst we've got them.
We've got light winds both today and tomorrow, and we're sailing dead downwind, and so we're going to hoist the Spinnaker to give us a bit more speed. But in order to do that, we need to turn up into the wind, drop the mainsail, furl the genoa, and then we can hoist the Spinnaker. And of course, we need somebody hand steering during that.
I have no idea how big this Spinnaker is or how it's going to affect us, so it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Worst case, we can always pull it down again.
Okay, you ready?
Although that took a little while to put up, it's unfortunately not done very much for our speed because the Spinnaker really for this boat needs to be a lot bigger. So yeah, we're probably actually going slightly slower than we were with the main and Genoa, but the trouble is that we can't let the mainsail all of the way out because, like most catamarans, the shrouds are so far back that it just doesn't allow you to do that. So at least the mainsail isn't crashing around and it's nice gentle sailing. But it's going to take us a while to get there.
Now normally on a monohull, when we're flying a symmetrical spinnaker like this, we would use a pole to hold out the tack of the kite. But because we're on a catamaran, we don't have a pole, but we have such a wide boat that we're able to tie each corner to a corner of the bow, and that spreads the sail well enough. It will still work better with a spinnaker pole. We'd be able to use it much more with the mainsail. This way it stays in the centre of the boat, so part of it would be shaded by the mainsail. But it works well enough, especially with no mainsail up. It has been a glorious, gentle wind day today. And there's a bit of good news, because at the moment, no one's steering. Ron's actually managed to get the autopilot working again by rebuilding the cog, which had all this teeth stripped out of some epoxy and bits that he had on board. Nobody's under any illusions that it's going to carry on working once the breeze gets up and the waves gets up and put some serious load on it. But in these gentle conditions, just drifting along under Spinnaker, it's doing the job, which is great because it's so much more relaxing when you can go and do other things around the boat rather than being stuck at the wheel. And with these light conditions, we're now thinking about keeping this Spinnaker up overnight because the latest forecast that we just downloaded shows that the conditions are going to be similar for the next couple of days. So, this is great, but a little bit worried if the breeze did pick up, snuffing one of these Spinnakers, pulling the sock down over it can be difficult because you've got to pull down on this rope above your head, and when you pull down on that rope, it's trying to pull you up and off the deck, which is dangerous. So the trick that we learn and we use on Florence is we put a ratchet block on this rope and we attach that ratchet block to a cleat on the deck, and then instead of trying to pull down on that rope, we're then pulling up on the rope. So the forces are pulling us into the deck, which is a nice safe way, and you can use your legs to brace. So in order to be confident to keep this up overnight and be able to get it down easily if the breeze does pick up, we're going to add this block. But to do that, we first need to snuff it. Okay, go for it now. So that's the ratchet block onto the rope. Tie the rope back onto the snuffer sock. So got the ratchet correct so that when I pull down, so I'm pulling the sock down, it goes, the ratchet works, and then if it tries to lift back up, the block only goes one way. So it won't let it, it'll also stop it lifting off the deck, so it really helps. Okay, and we just loop that like that onto the cleat. Okay, Jane, you ready to sheet on?
Yeah.
So if you're sheeting on a bit now. There it goes. So that should make it much easier to get rid of this if we get some bad weather in the night. And we're starting to get more varied conditions. I can see over on our starboard side here we've got a cloud which seems to be raining a little bit, and when clouds rain they push out a lot of wind. So you can get some increased wind on the front edge of those clouds. What we don't want to happen is to be stuck with the Spinnaker up when we get a lot of wind. So we'll have to keep an eye out for those tonight. Meantime, the autopilot has been running for 3 hours and 47 minutes, which is much longer than it lasted last time. These gentle conditions, maybe it'll last through the night, you know, and then we'll get a nice restful night, who knows. everything was going swimmingly, and then we heard the fishing line go off. So we snuffed the Spinnaker to slow down because it was way too hard to pull the fish in otherwise. So now we're just going along at about 3 knots under no sails whatsoever, just the winches of the boat. Now we're going to see what we've got in the end of the line.
I reckon a small tuna. Oh yeah, it's tiny.
It's very small.
It's actually got 2 small fish behind it, following it.
Oh, I lost it.
So,
okay, I'm going to have to bring it up on the side next time. There's a lip around the back of the boat and it just got caught on that. I was trying to do it from being safe within the guardrails. Oh well. Didn't get that fish for tea, but maybe we'll get another one. Try again.
fish on again.
That's another fish. Definitely something.
Definitely something.
Okay, let's go and snuff it.
I think it might have gone. I think that's gone.
Yeah, I think it's jumped off. Maybe I should have given it more of a tug before we slowed down.
The fact that the autopilot has been working has allowed me to go through our food stuff because we're at the point in the passage where some stuff is going off very, very quickly and not necessarily in the order that we would expect. So we're getting to the point where we're going to have some quite interesting meals. Tonight we need to use up a load of carrots, which were going off, some coriander and lots of green beans. So I'm going to salvage what we can with these because they're no longer green.
They don't look so good.
They don't look great, but maybe hopefully with a bit of butter and garlic they'll taste good still. And then we're going to try some coriander in our coleslaw, which will be interesting. Could be a winner or it could be just ultra weird, but we'll find out.
And is that to go with burgers?
Yeah, we're having burgers unless that tuna gets back on the line.
How are you finding cooking in a massive galley on a boat that's not rolling around anywhere near as much as Florence would?
Oh, absolutely loving it. It's amazing, especially because we've got a freezer on board as well. Just makes so many meal options much more available and easier. I'm going to have to be really careful when we do get back onto Florence because look how complacent I'm getting. Just put the coleslaw on the side like that and expect it to stay there, which would never happen on Florence, even in conditions this calm.
Okay, let go of the sheet.
It's all happening, the wind's just got up and the fishing line has gone off.
Oh, I don't know.
Has it gone?
Maybe. Just something went a bit lighter.
It might be diving. Is it still there?
That's edible. So here we go. We had the one that got away earlier in the day. I think it might be the same one, came back for a second go at the lure. So it's not the biggest fish, but it'll feed 4 people. So we decided to keep it. And this will be dinner tonight. Are they the suspect green beans?
They're no longer suspect. These are the select green beans.
What are you going to do, just sear around the edges, yeah?
Well, Ron and Jane would actually prefer theirs cooked through because it's first tuna, or first offshore tuna, and then for us, I'm going to take them out of the pan sooner, so just sear them around the edges, if you like it, like sushi in the middle.
And as that fish is sizzling in the pan, we've got another big raining cloud up to windward. So at the moment it seems to have nicked our breeze, we've got nothing, but we're expecting a bit more wind to come out of that, which is why we've got just the Genoa up now instead of the Spinnaker, because the Genoa is smaller and can handle more wind than the Spinnaker can. So, fresh fish for dinner with a beautiful sunset to look out on. This is very civilised living, being able to all sit around a table together with a working autopilot. Well done, Ron. Oh, it's not going to work for very long. We know it's not going to work for very long. Maybe until the end of dinner would be good.
Although we did get to finish dinner together, a few hours later the autopilot packed up for good.
Next time, we have a chance encounter with a turtle caught in a net and are left with no option but to get on with hand steering across 2,000 miles of open ocean.
For extra updates in between these bi-weekly videos, and to find out what we're up to in real time, head over to Patreon and join the crew. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to make sure that you don't miss the next episode here on YouTube.
Continuing our voyage would not be possible without the support of our patrons. Thank you to all of you, and especially to our star patrons.